Hello, everyone. I am Veronica Chow, and I am the Boston Globe's Deputy Managing Editor for Living Arts. I want to welcome all of you and thank you for joining us here for this lunchtime talk with the Globe's knowledgeable, talented, and very popular TV critic, Matthew Gilbert. You see him at the bottom of your screen there. Matthew's work, I think, has felt so essential these past 16 months or so when we've spent so much time at home and we've had so much reason to sort of look for distraction from all the real world stresses. I really want to thank you for connecting with us and for subscribing to the Globe and supporting our journalism. You are the ones who are keeping the newsroom going, and we are hugely grateful to you. If there's one good thing that's sort of come out of this pandemic for us, it's these virtual events that we've really enjoyed doing and sort of having the chance to answer your questions about TV and hear what's on your mind and sort of connect with you live and in person. And some of you will be watching this later because this is recorded. But the reason for this one, we did one back in December, but this one we wanted to talk today a little bit about this ambitious piece that Matthew wrote for us in this past Sunday's art section, where he named the 25 best TV episodes of the 2000s. And those are in ranked order, plus a list of 25 more runners up. Hopefully, many of you on this call today have seen it, and it could be useful, I think, today because it's supposed to start torrentially raining later and into tomorrow. So it's a good thing to have in your back pocket when you're looking for some good things to watch and or rewatch from the archives over this past more than 20 years. So we're going to answer as many questions as we can of your questions. So there's that Q&A function down there that you see at the bottom of your screen where you can ask stuff live, and we'll try to keep up with those. I have a few questions that people submitted when they signed up, so we'll get to some of those. But anything you want to ask Matthew, just put it in that Q&A and we will try to get through them. And we're going to end at 12:45. So let's start with this latest opus. This is the ranking of 25 best TV episodes of the 2000s. I know this was an idea that you came up with a while ago, Matthew, and I think your editor never let you forget it. And finally it came to be, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, the idea and the process and sort of how you made the list.
It's true. We came up with the idea probably 2 years ago, maybe longer.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then about, let's say 16 months ago, we thought, we're going to do it now. This is the time. This is the moment. And I went so far as to write a column in the Sunday section inviting readers to participate. I thought it'd be a great idea just to hear what other people's favorite episodes since 2000 were. And I heard from so many people. It was so rewarding. I love it when I hear from people, even if they hate me. It's nice. And I heard from a ton of people with suggestions. And then as I just began to put the list together, of course, the pandemic kicked in, and we kind of switched modes of TV coverage and decided to focus on what people could watch during the pandemic. So we have spent the past, year and a half really focusing on suggestions for people of shows to binge and to, explore. So it was kind of fun to get back to that and reread all those emails from way back when and put it together finally at long last.
So you've been the Globe's critic for all of the 2000s, right? So you've watched all this stuff, and taken a lot of notes. I mean, can you talk about your process? Like when you watch a show, are you always taking notes? And so you could go back and look at your notes from 2 decades ago, or
yeah, I do take notes. I did not revisit them for this piece. In fact, they're probably all been recycled. I've probably written over them already, but those notes that I took while I was watching episodes led to the pieces that I wrote. And I certainly went back and revisited pieces that I had written, about specific episodes or just about entire series. That was incredibly helpful to be able to go into the archives of the Globe and pull it back up. My memory is okay. So it always helps to get reminders and things to prod old feelings, which happened a lot. So
do you think a lot of the shows that people mentioned ended up on the list? Do you remember like the most popular ones from readers?
Absolutely. One of the problems with doing this is that I had so much time that I was in danger of overthinking it. I overthink anyway.
Yes.
I definitely think too much. And so this was just like years of like, no, maybe I'll put this in number one. No, maybe I'll put that at number one, So to revisit the reader's suggestions was very grounding and in fact, affirming, because the episode that I wanted to be a number one emotionally, the episode that I don't think I've ever seen at the top of a best episodes chart before was the finale of 6 Feet Under. And that was the one that I heard about most from readers.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there were about, I heard from about 200 people, and each of them had a number of suggestions. And I would say at least half, probably closer to, 3/4 of all of those people mentioned that episode.
So did you once you got into it, did you sort of debate that, or was it like it was always going to be that and now this confirms it? I know you had a Breaking Bad episode and then a Mad Men episode in the number 3 and number 2 spot. Did you jiggle those around a lot?
It's torture. Oh, Veronica, I think I should get extra pay for all the stress and stress that I went through and in fact continue to go through. In preparation for our conversation today, I went back and reread all of the comments.
Yeah, so that was really fun to see. I loved seeing the debate, and it was passionate, but it was largely civil, I thought.
Absolutely, yeah.
What did you take away from that? I mean, what kind of feedback from readers after it posted? Was there anything that changed your mind or surprised you? Or
absolutely. I mean, I changed my mind 100 times reading those comments, because people make, when it came to say a show like Curb Your Enthusiasm, I mean, it's really challenging to come up with one special episode, because there are probably 15 that are tattooed on my memory, that as just being extraordinary and hysterical. And a number of people said, how did you not put the Palestinian chicken episode on? And I started thinking maybe I should have. It was in the running, but I didn't, and now I regret it. But look, that's the way these lists work.
So I'm looking at the Q&A that's going on right now, and somebody asked, I thought this was a good question, like what episodes from the list can be fully enjoyed on their own without having to watch the whole series?
That's a great, there are some, in fact. The first one that comes to mind is the episode Thanksgiving from a wonderful series called Master of None, from Aziz Ansari. And I would say almost every single episode of the first 2 seasons is special in some way, except the pilot. But Thanksgiving was one that I just couldn't let go of. It's basic, some of his best episodes in that series focus on characters other than himself. And this particular episode is almost a bottle episode about his friend Denise, played by Lena Waithe, who it basically chronicles, the Thanksgivings across her life over the years, and the way she gradually comes out to her mother, and and then her mother's gradual acceptance of her sexual orientation, and then even her girlfriend, which is lovely. And you could sit down with that and watch it without having seen any other episodes of that show. Although I recommend that you do watch the other episodes of that show, because it's so wonderful.
And of course, you had the first episode of Lost on the list, and so that one, yeah.
I mean, that was just, a lot of this was emotional. I mean, it's all emotional and subjective. I don't care, bottom line, it just is, because, obviously there are semi-objective things having to do with camera work and acting and scripting. But given the fact that all of those things are done well, it really comes down to which episodes spoke to you or me, and which ones you still remember vividly. And the first episode of Lost, much as I didn't want to really do too many pilots in the list, that was one that I just thought was brilliant from start to finish. And it was so different from anything I'd seen before, and it really changed TV. Like I think the finale of 6 Feet Under, I think these episodes went on to really have an impact. Same thing. That's why Ricky Gervais's The Office is up so high. I mean, it's hard to underestimate how profound the impact of the original The Office, and in particular episode 4, I would say, that I chose, has been on TV and where it's headed in the past 20 years.
Somebody is bringing up, how is your dog? I told Matthew that the last time we had one of these chats, somebody asked about his dog.
Duncan, come.
Matthew has
here somewhere. And when he arrives, I'll be sure to. He's coming. Duncan.
This is Matthew's
dog. Come here, buddy. Come here, buddy.
He was on camera before.
There he is. There's my boy. There's my boy. All right. I guess I need to give him a treat now.
Yeah. So I was also curious about, sort of, you looked at writing, and you were just talking about sort of like originality and things that changed, the course of TV, and of course the acting. Is there one of those things that, kind of affects choice, affects the quality most, or is it really hard to parse that?
I think it's really hard to parse it. I mean, there are episodes like, The Suitcase by Mad Men, which was my second favorite episode, where I think it all is working together. The script and the performances together are so extraordinary. Now, in that particular case, I would say the camera work was good, but not really part of what makes it so great. It really is about the script, how it develops the ongoing storyline, but also how each scene works, how each scene is structured, how the episode is structured to build, which it builds beautifully. And then those two performances by John Hamm and Elizabeth Moss, I mean, I put those up against almost anything on TV ever, including The Sopranos. Although as a show, I prefer The Sopranos, but I love Mad Men. But in that particular episode, it's just outrageous. Now, in Ozymandias, which is I think my third episode, and that's Breaking Bad, all of it. It's the script, it's the acting, it's the camera work. That show, Breaking Bad, the camera work on that show was just mind-blowingly good throughout, especially from the second season on. I mean, that every angle, every shot somehow served the storyline or served the script in ways that were just, I mean, you can watch those episodes 2 and 3 times and catch different things that the cinematographer was doing.
And that's what we depend on you to educate us on, or at least I do. That's one thing I love about reading your writing. I wanted to segue here into some of the questions that readers sent in before, when they signed up for this session. So, so here's a question: what are your favorite shows that got canceled way too soon? I know you've talked a lot about shows that go on too long, but what about
right? That is, and so I'm almost, I hate to sort of grieve shows that have been ended too soon, because it's preferable to seeing a show just drag on, and and I mean, something like I've written a lot about Freaks and Geeks, which I think is a 1-season wonder. I wish it had lasted at least another season or 2. I think they could have done, even just continued to do such wonderful things. So that's a show that I think, at the same time, sometimes I'm grateful, as I was just saying, that it didn't go on and on, because, it did not have the opportunity to suck and get bad. And, it just is one perfect season. And a lot of people feel that way about My So-Called Life, as do I. There's a show that most people have forgotten about, if they ever saw it in the first place, which is Andy Richter Controls the Universe. It's an office comedy. It was on Fox. It was so inventive and so funny and ahead of its time. And it didn't last very long at all. It had, like Scrubs, it had, surrealistic flashes that, almost acted like animation. They would just go to another place, have a little moment, and then come back to the action. That's a show I grieved. And there's another show, I could go on and on, so I'll just say one more. Grosse Pointe, from Darren Star. And that's a show that was about the behind the scenes drama / comedy at a show that looked a lot like 90210. And it was just about, the competition among the actors, and, the balding actor who wore a toupee. And it was hysterical. And it was from Darren Star, who was involved in Beverly Hills 90210. So it had the sense that, it was based in some kind of fact. And that was quickly canceled. I can't remember. It may have been Fox. It may have been what was then the WB. I'm not sure, but it was gone much too quickly.
So drilling down into a really specific question, somebody wants to know whether you prefer Breaking Bad or The Wire. I know Breaking Bad was their number 3, no, number 2, number 3, one of your number 3 episodes. And The Wire was on there, of course, too. If you had to choose one, could you?
Absolutely, I would choose Breaking Bad.
Okay.
Bad, 100%. And there's a reason for it. I admire The Wire, and it would absolutely be on my top 10 list of all time. It's an amazing piece of work, and almost everything David Simon is involved with turns out beautifully. But the approach, the perspective is sort of sociological. It's about, the systems of our government, and our communities, and also our criminals. And I tend to get more attached to shows that are about the characters, and their psychologies. I mean, one of the great things about The Sopranos, which is my number 1 show of all time, is its psychological perspective, on characters that you don't usually see through that lens. I mean, it was, after all, about someone in therapy. So, it was sort of a setup to really go deep on motivations and, parentage and earlier generations and generational memory. And so that's why I would say, it felt like Breaking Bad was a little bit more about this man and his compulsion to be special and to be powerful. And I love that. It's just nothing that I love more than that.
I noticed in the online comments with your piece, there were people debating various Sopranos episodes,
Yes.
and were there others that you had in that spot? Yeah, a lot. Okay.
Yeah, that was
Can you name some
real.
others that you are among your favorites?
Uh,
Is it too hard?
well, yeah, I mean, there was college, there was university, there was, oh gosh, I mean, the finale, I think it was called Whitecaps, where, Tony and Carmela just have it all out. I mean, it's just a brilliant, brilliant episode. The one I chose, it was an emotional thing. I just felt like that episode, I remember, just left me dazed and left me thinking, it's the one I ended up choosing was the one, because I only allowed myself to take one episode per series. Otherwise, it would have just, the top 25 would all be Breaking Bad, The Sopranos, Mad Men, Black Mirror, it all would have been that. So I chose the one called Employee of the Month, which is the one where Dr. Melfi gets raped, and Tony basically gives her the opportunity to have the rapist killed after he has slipped through the legal system. And I just found it so sharp. It was kind of a microcosm of the whole series where, we as the viewers, as well as Dr. Melfi, who is kind of our surrogate in the series to some extent, we're given the opportunity to have someone offed, and it puts you in that moral quandary because you want the guy to die or you want him to be punished, ultimately she says no. But yes, it was very difficult to choose from. The Sopranos was really one of the hardest ones to choose from. Absolutely.
So this is another reader question and takes us into a totally different realm, but somebody knows you really like BBC dramas and wants to know what your top picks are for BBC dramas. Do you have a clear
Well,
favorite?
I swing both ways in terms of, the sort of sticky, schmaltzy stuff like Poldark, and the really dark, incendiary, difficult stuff like Happy Valley. I mean, both of those shows I watched and loved. Although I would say Happy Valley is probably the finer show in terms of, drama and acting and scripting. It's hard to say. When you say BBC, I assume you're saying, British shows, because we get British shows from other channels as well, like ITV. And Luther, I think, was BBC. And Luther, to me, with Idris Elba, was extraordinary for 2 seasons. There were, I think, 2 more. Or were there 3 more? No, I think there were just 2 more. And it just started getting really bad and too short and all of that. And I believe there's a movie coming too.
Oh.
But those 2 first seasons were really something. It was like a suspense detective drama with elements of horror in there. So it really was compelling, and I couldn't look away. And Idris Elba is amazing, and that was that first season, or that first series, as they say in England, was my introduction to Ruth Wilson, I believe, who was so good as the killer who got away. What else? Trying to think. Sherlock, obviously, I love Sherlock. at least at first. And Normal People, I think, was BBC, a co-production between BBC and Hulu, and that was pretty great. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big masterpiece theater guy. A lot of people in the comments and in emails to me complained that I did not have any masterpiece theater, including Downton Abbey, on my list. What can I say? As much as I loved the series, I mean, I loved All Creatures Great and Small, as you know, syrupy as it is, but there was no one episode that I thought, this is extraordinary, this is really a standout hour of TV. And I'm afraid that, you know, much as I love Downton Abbey, I really can't think of one episode that, you know, just struck me as outstanding from all the rest.
I want to point out that you had that little sidebar that mentioned some of your favorite shows that didn't make any of the lists for that reason, that you couldn't find a individual episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to me, like, Shameless would absolutely be on a list of my top 25 shows of all time. I love that show, even though it ended poorly. It stayed on the air probably 3 seasons at least too long, especially after Emmy Rossum left. But it was a wonderful show with a beautifully built world, great performances by those kids who we actually watched grow up from cute kid actors into extraordinary young adult actors. So that's a show that's on the list of series that, you know, were just consistently good and interesting and among my favorites, but there was nothing specifically jumping out at me. Friday Night Lights, another series that I worship, and I just think it was unusual, especially for a network show. But, you know, and I could have pushed myself to find an episode in that series that I thought I could single out, but really, in retrospect, it's just a great series. I'm not sure that any, you know, it was a cumulative series. You know, it built episode after episode, and it was consistent, but I'm not sure that there were specific hours that I wanted to single out.
Somebody in the Q&A, just want to point out, asked about who's a digital subscriber, asked about how to get a digital copy of the list. I tried to paste in the link there and it doesn't seem to let me do that. So if anybody wants to email me, veronica.chao@globe.com, I can send you a link to the stories. If you're a digital subscriber, you should be able to access it from there, as well as the sidebars that we're talking about a little bit. So
maybe the homepage should anchor at the bottom.
Yeah.
Just thinking. But I have to give credit to Ryan Huddle, the designer, who did an extraordinary job of putting all that together. And, you know, I helped find the clips, but he incorporated clips of all 25 finales into that digital version.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for that. I think readers really appreciated that.
I love that too. The digital version is great, and the print version looks really good too. We had a spread, and then you had to turn the page to get your number one pick. I liked.
I know. I loved what they did.
Suspense there in print.
Yeah.
So, okay, more reader questions. Somebody asked about your 3 top all-time favorite shows. It sounds like you've sort of answered that with some of the names that you said would be all over the list if you had allowed yourself more than one pick.
Well, I mean, from the past 20 years, but of all time, I mean, Sopranos would still be number 1. And you know what? Breaking Bad might be number 2, but I think I'd have to get the Twilight Zone in there. To me, that's a show that, as dated as it can seem when you watch it now, is still mind-blowing and still has an impact on TV. In fact, I don't think Lost would exist. So many shows wouldn't exist without the precedent of the Twilight Zone. Rod Serling is a hero of mine, and I think what he did with that show, you know, it was Black Mirror for, you know, another era, and it was extraordinary. So maybe those 3. So much of this list making thing is depends on your mood, where you're at the moment that you write the list. I mean, every year when I do my top 10 at the end of the year, I sort of second guess myself. And I realize that, a week from now, I'm probably going to reconfigure them, or want to reconfigure them. So, but yeah, those, I think right now, I'm feeling like those would be my top three.
Another thing I noticed just when you were talking about Black Mirror in the comments was some people talking about, or maybe I saw this elsewhere, but I only watched the first episode and I was sort of put off by it and I didn't go back, but people were saying you shouldn't even watch the first episode. You should watch that. It's so different from the rest. That
Absolutely. I mean, and I have felt that way. In fact, I think I even wrote a story about number is not terrible, about how first episodes often you just have to get through them. I felt that way about Master of None as well. But that first episode of Black Mirror is really good and really strong, but really disturbing. More disturbing than I think anything else on that series. And that's saying a lot. It's basically about the prime minister being bribed. Forced into having sex with a pig on TV.
yeah.
on a screen. So, a lot of people finished that episode and thought, I don't want to watch Black Mirror ever again, which is too bad because all the subsequent episodes are, a little bit more, not as viscerally disturbing, put it that way.
Okay, I'm gonna give it a second chance.
Yeah, go back, watch the one that I put on my list called Nosedive.
Okay.
I just think I loved it, and it really speaks to right now. And Bryce Dallas Howard is really good in it.
I did watch some of these that I hadn't seen, and somehow I completely missed Lost. I never watched Lost, so I watched the pilot, and now I'm sucked into it completely.
Really, you watched the pilot?
It's my plan for tonight and the rest of the nights until I run out. Yeah, it was
so funny. I actually want to do a story about this. I'm not sure how to deal with a show like Lost, because to me, the ending was such a profound disappointment that it's hard not to invalidate everything that came before it. Some people feel that way about How I Met Your Mother. It's like it was so great and it promised so much, and then it just dudded out at the end. So part of me wants to say, Veronica, don't do it. Don't go there.
I know the ending is supposed to be, and I'm barreling towards an ending that probably will frustrate me, but once you watch
there's a lot of good stuff along the way.
Yeah. So these are going back to some questions that I had. Are there things that you think we need more of on TV? Like you wish there were more things like X, or things that we have too much of? I'm just wondering, in your opinion, where should TV go, or what are we missing?
It's a really good big question. I think TV has gone in a great direction since I took over this job. When I started in '98, people were focusing primarily on, 5 or 6 broadcasts, 5 broadcasts in PBS. People were not really embracing cable, even though it existed, and a few shows like maybe Larry Sanders kind of broke through a little bit. So TV has gone in an amazing direction. The quality, as everyone knows, has just skyrocketed. I do worry that a lot of really good things are getting lost because so much is now coming out, because there are so many outlets. There's all the streaming services, there are all the cable channels, and then there's regular old broadcast, which every once in a while comes up with something decent. So I see, of course, you asked what we need more of, and I'm telling you what we need less of. But I'm afraid I see shows get lost, like really good, like that show. There's a wonderful show that Peacock imported from England called We Are Lady Parts. And it's just an extraordinary little 6-episode series about, a all-female punk band, and all the members are Muslims, and it's just it breaks all the stereotypes you've ever encountered about Muslims, and it's a wonderful, wonderful series. Nobody really knows about it. There are a bunch of those series. I think A.D. Bryant's Shrill on Hulu, I think it just got lost. I mean, it did actually get some Emmy nominations this year. But or at least one, but that's a little gem that I think a lot of people are missing. So I think the quality has gone up, and that's great. The quantity has also skyrocketed, and as a result, good things are being overlooked. So that's sort of,
Yeah, this is where we depend on you to help us find those things.
that's
Although
right.
even for you, I mean, you talked about how you can't watch everything, and there are things that you just haven't seen. I know readers have pointed you to things that you might not have found too. So
Absolutely. I mean, readers have pointed me to some great stuff, including Shtisel, which is a show that I kind of managed not to see. And I kept hearing from people saying, why are you not writing about this show? And so I, grudgingly went to Netflix, and I just adore it. They recently brought it back for a 3rd season, and it was just as good as the first 2. So yeah, but as I wrote in my introduction to the top 25, I can only, I can't see everything anymore. When I started the job, I could potentially have seen one episode of every show, at least one episode of every show that was on. I mean, now that would be impossible. So I can only write out of what I've already seen, and so people were saying, why isn't this on the list? Why isn't that? Well, in some cases, I just didn't see the show. What
do
can I do?
you watch 5 minutes of a show and then decide and abandon, or do you pretty much finish what if you start it, you watch through to the end?
Yes, I will absolutely watch a show, probably not just for 5 minutes, but for one episode, and say, no, this is not what I want. I don't need to see more of this, for sure. I mean, if I later read something by someone saying, you really need to stick with it, it's worth it, I might go back and continue. But yes, I mean, sometimes I just want to know what a show is, even though I don't think I'm going to actually watch the whole series.
Um, I'm also curious about, during the pandemic, and, whether you're aware of how tastes have changed, whether your own tastes have changed, whether you're sort of finding yourself watching different types of things, or being drawn towards different, or hearing from readers about, wanting more comfort TV or things like that. I mean, what have you
Yes,
observed about that?
that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, people are definitely, were definitely seeking more comforty type shows, although anything that was good. I mean, everything from Queen's Gambit to Tiger King was sort of grabbing people's attention, but in there was also a renewed strain of interest in kind of comfort shows. I mean, the evidence of it were shows like Emily in Paris, where I think it's really not anything challenging. It's just pretty sights in a beautiful city with pretty people wearing pretty fashions, having pretty romantic problems. So I did detect that there was definitely a interest in comfort stuff, along with just anything that was good, and for me, it was wonderful, because suddenly people were taking my advice, those, I mean, really, they were searching for stuff because they had all this time, and they were Nobody was going out. And so I felt like it was just wonderful to finally have someone take my advice about, man-seeking woman. I mean, when it was on the air and everybody was living their lives and going out, I don't think anyone really took me up on it, even though I wrote about it 100 times. But during the pandemic, when I wrote about it, I did hear from readers saying, I'm so glad you turned me on to that. It's on Hulu, by the way. I love that show. And it was just this little overlooked
Yeah.
comedy.
And you started your Ask Matthew column, which, for anybody on this call who wants to ask specific questions, like I'm looking for X type of show, write to Matthew and he may answer it in his Ask Matthew column. Are you getting lots of reader questions for that?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they don't come specifically for that column. They just come in as they always have.
Okay.
And then I select which ones to answer in the column. During the pandemic, or during the early height of the pandemic, I focused on requests for, things to watch and binge. Now I have expanded it to other questions. I think this week it was about, someone complaining to me on Twitter about how these shows are depicting texting and how hard it can be to read on-screen texts, and what can we do about it? And I thought that was a great question worth addressing.
There is a lot of that, definitely.
Yeah. There's a new show on Netflix that's pretty lame, pretty horrible, called Clickbait. Yeah, with Zoe Kazan, of all things, who I love, and she's not bad in it, but and Adrian Grenier from Entourage. But it's sort of one of these suspense series that is twisty, and the ending is just so profoundly disappointing and almost enraging. But there's a lot of texting going on, and they handle it really well because they blow it up, and it's like this big on the screen. So it's a little bit more manageable than actually having to look into someone's phone.
We have just a couple minutes left. So this is going to be my last question. I also, another person is asking about sharing the digital list. So I just want to repeat that if you want to email me, I can send it to you. I can't, for some reason, paste it into the Q&A there, but my email is veronica.chao@globe.com. I will also tweet it out of my Twitter account at Veronica Chow, so that you can look for it there too, along with the sidebars that we've been talking about. Okay, so last question is, I know commenters have often said that you have a dream job. And my question for you is, do you agree? And what is the best thing and what is the worst thing about your job, Matthew?
Well, reader, since I'm talking to my boss,
Putting you on this.
It's absolutely a dream job. I mean, let's not forget that not only do I get to watch TV, but I also have to, spend a significant amount of time writing about it, and that's definitely work. But I love writing. I have to say, it's a thoroughly wonderful job. Sometimes, like any job, it can be difficult. If I'm writing about the Emmys or something on deadline, it's a challenge. When I do the Emmys, as you know, Veronica, I still have to write 3 different stories.
Yeah.
For each edition of the newspaper.
Yeah.
So
I know award shows are your very favorite thing.
It's a hellish night. I mean, I sort of enjoy it in a sick way because I can't really think. But then afterwards I sort of try to remember what it is I wrote. But yeah, no, I love this job. It's hard work. It absolutely is. I mean, especially now, there's just so much stuff coming at us, and so I really have to spend time watching it all. And it's, I always used to say this to Ty Burr, who was the Globe's TV film critic, I have to watch entire series. It's not just a 2 or 3 hour thing. it's, you know, it's every year there's probably 12 hours sometimes when you're talking about something like This Is Us, even more. So there's a lot of viewing, but I really enjoy it, and can't imagine myself doing anything else at this point.
Well, on behalf of the Globe and readers, thank you for doing it so well. We really depend on you, and you have guided us well, and you've
Thanks.
taken all the complaints about you put your opinions out there, and you know it's super helpful. If anybody has stories that they'd like to suggest, or other chats that they'd love to hear Matthew talk about, please do, just send us your ideas. We love hearing from you. And yeah, we look forward to more of these, and more connecting with our readers. Thank you again for subscribing, and we're going to sign off.
All right, take care.
Thank you.